Hello and welcome to another edition of Meet the Manager. Here we chat to Fantasy Premier League managers with a more than enviable track record of success. We find out their key strategies for how they've done so well and also how they're tackling the current campaign. Today I'm joined by Pete Beswick, who is hovering around the top 100 in the overall rankings going into game week 34. He has also finished in the top 5,000 in 3 of the last 4 seasons. Pete, welcome. How are you?
Hi Joe, yeah, well thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks so much for joining us. I always look forward to these interviews. I always come away and learn something, and it's great to chat to people who are doing well this season, but also have done well in previous seasons. So the assumption is you know what you're doing. So let's crack on. What we want to do is have a look at your career. Now I've got on the screen. Can you just bear with me? So I'm gonna have to start again.
Oh, right.
I got the wrong picture up. Okay, that's fine.
Oh,
Luckily, that was
you
just
got you got a better one up, yeah?
I got one of the chips up. I meant to have your season history. They look very similar. Okay, I'm going to start again. That's fine. It's only a couple of
No
minutes.
worries, no worries.
I won't bother stopping recording. I'll just mark down what to cut out.
It was a very good introduction, anyway.
All right, let's see if I can do it again. That's good. Okay. Hello and welcome to another edition of Meet the Manager. Here we chat to Fantasy Premier League managers with a more than enviable track record of success. We find out the key strategies that have taken to the top and also how they're tackling the current campaign. Today I'm joined by Pete Beswick, who is hovering around the top 100 in the overall rankings going into game week 34. He's also finished in the top 5,000 in 3 of the last 4 seasons. Pete, welcome. How are you?
Hi Joe, yeah, fine, thanks. How you doing?
Yes, I'm well, and it's always good to have these interviews. I always feel I learn a lot, and it's great that you can spare some time for me to help me, and also the listeners and the viewers as well. So on screen we've got your career history, and here we can see that you've been playing since 2011. You start off first 3 seasons, you were probably just kind of just going through the motions by the look of it. Or perhaps you were really trying, but we'll find out in this interview. But then in 2014-15, it really kicked in. Top 5,000, following year, top 5,000, 86,000 the year after that. We'll find out what happened there. And then top 5,000 again, 3 out of 4 top 5,000. Wow. And here, this season, for the last few weeks, you've been in and around the top 100 in the overall rankings. So the 2 key aspects of your career I want to cover are those consistent high finishes since 2014. And secondly, and this is the second part of the interview we'll come to, is your excellent current season in which you're going against the grain and you're doing something very unusual with your chips, and it's a strategy that is really paying off. So it can pay to be different. So let's look at the your career, those top 5,000 returns, sandwiched in between them the 86k finish. What do you think were your key strategies during those 3 campaigns and the current season that enabled you to do so well?
Well, in previous seasons, I've usually been a bit of a slow starter, to be honest. And then you kind of always feel like you're sort of playing catch up a little bit for the rest of the season. I mean, I think this season maybe what I did a bit different was, luckily last summer the World Cup was on. So I got a good look at the players and I could sort of see who was doing well. But because the World Cup was on, I actually went into game week 1 without any of the World Cup players that did well and got to the later stages. So I actually set up a game week 1 team without any later stage World Cup players in because I thought they'd all be a bit tired and they're coming back. And I think I was 39,000 from game week 1, which is the best sort of start I've ever had from a game week 1 team. What I've also tried to do is stay loyal to sort of favourite players within the last few seasons. So always sort of stuck with Aguero and Salah. Sigurdsson's another favourite of the game, isn't he? They've always tried to get him in. Alonso, very good, the last few years.
Are these players or in previous seasons? Obviously, sometimes the players differ, but is that the strategy you've had in those 3 5k finishes as well to
Yeah.
that loyalty?
Yeah, try to sort of stick loyal. You know, have a sort of core players set of players that I usually go back to. And then I mean, saying that I've not really had Sigurdsson much this year, but I'm not even sure if I've had him in at all. But Aguero and Salah and Vardy and Alonso have always been players that I've sort of gone back to in the past, and then sort of try to build up around that. I mean, another thing I try and do is I always try and have two good, solid captain options that I can always go to. So I started the season with Salah and Aguero. I think maybe a few people were maybe put off by Salah because he was 13 million in the game when he started off this year. And I think there was a few sort of bit and ahhing if to get him in for 13. But I decided to roll with that anyway. And Salah and Aguero did well, you know, earlier on. They sort of hit the ground running. And then, I mean, another thing I try to sort of do is always look out for players that are playing out of position. So defenders that have, you know, maybe playing further forwards. I mean, there was a brief moment this year when Richarlison and Hazard were both playing up front. So, you know, try and jump on them, you know, straight away, really, and try and get them in early.
So there's players like, say, for example, Jeffrey Schlupp at Crystal Palace may not necessarily be your team, but he's exactly the type of player you're looking at.
Spot on, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, so I had him in for the free hit last week.
And I mean, going back over those other campaigns, so you started well this campaign. You had the World Cup to view players, and it gave you lots of information as well. So you knew that certain players probably wouldn't even start game week 1, so you needn't get them as well. So that reduced the pool of good players as well. In the previous season, so 2014-15, for example, 15-16, these ones, did you start like, you know, with a terrible game week 1, you know, 1 million rank or something like that, 2 million rank, or did you have anything, you know, kind of close to the start you had this season?
It's not been as successful as it was this season. Yeah, you're right. It's always been sort of around sort of 1 or 2 million, and then I've always sort of felt like I'm like playing catch up a little bit, you know, until the sort of the second sort of international break sort of stage, and then it's started kicking in, and I've got to know sort of who's starting, who wasn't starting, but I think like you say, I mean, I think that the pool was narrowed this year because I tried to stay away from those sort of players that were playing, you know, in the later stages of the World Cup. So like Hazard, for example, you know, and but then we were quite lucky because Aguero was, you know, ready and fit and available, so, you know, he was ready to go.
I mean, what you've described there is 2 games really. So the game that you've been playing this season is staying in the lead and kind of edging up bit by bit, and and the game that you've been playing before has been catch up. So in terms of catching up, because these videos and podcasts are designed, although we talk about the current season, it's designed for people to take away kind of more general tips as well. How have you gone from, you know, a bad start, 1 million, 2 million rank, something like that, to gradually getting up to that 5,000? So, for example, some people will go to use their wild cards during the first international break. You've got some information. You can really turn it around then. Is that a strategy you've adopted?
It is, to be honest. Yeah, I've always, you know, kind of wild carded early. I kind of feel like I'm a bit more confident, you know, sort of by the first international break, that you know kind of who's starting, who's not starting, and, you know, like things like when new teams, you know, get promoted and you're never quite sort of sure, you know, exactly how they're going to get on. Are they going to be flying? Are they not? So it just, I think it helps you to sort of pick up on those teams that are, you know, really sort of doing well early on. And again, it's, you know, new managers come in, they might have different approach, different players come in, you know, there's new signings over the summer. So, you know, it's always a little bit of an unknown, really. And kind of, I've maybe had, you know, 1 or 2 too many of those type of, you know, new players when I first started the game in the earlier years that I started playing. But I've reined that in, I think, slowly, and I've kind of gone back to, like I said before, the sort of my favourite players of the game, sort of thing, and the loyalty, and sort of try to have a core base around those players.
I mean, looking at the number of hits you've taken this season, just three hits. So that would, that tallies up with what you're saying about loyalty. You don't feel the need to keep jumping ship to, the next big thing each game week. You stick with players. Is that common for those top seasons as well? Do you barely take any hits?
I've taken less hits this season than I ever have done, really. I used to take a lot of hits, but I've tried to rein it in a lot. I'm trying to be more sort of patient now than I used to be. I think the power of having a free transfer is very important, really. Trying to sort of save that when I can for emergencies or injuries, or when the unexpected happens. I mean, I find points are difficult to make. So why spend -4 hit when you've got 15 players to choose from. There is a bench. So I try to use that when I can. I mean, I think another key thing to sort of that's helped me stay away from hits is have a look at the press conferences. Make sure you know who the injured players are, who aren't, and also to sort of try and avoid looking at price rises and things like that. They can be sort of very influential on making decisions and maybe making early transfers.
No, that's something I very much advocate. Points, not pounds, because whilst at this stage of the season, when you're wildcarding, those types of things can be useful to have a higher team value. At the end of the day, you want to get players in that do well. Chances are, if they're doing well in points, they're going to do well in the transfer market as well. In terms of how you decide on transfers and how you decide on the captaincy as well. Firstly, timing. When do you tend to? I'm guessing you don't tend to make an immediate transfer. Saturday night, deadline's passed, you make an early transfer, or do you wait until those press conferences?
At least until I've seen the press conferences.
At least.
Yeah. Never before. I have done previously. But again, it's like I say, I've really sort of, tried to be more strict with myself this year, and it's really, paid off. I mean, it's so important to see the press conferences first. I almost, I think it's difficult to make a decision until you've seen the press conferences. How you can sort of go through the week and with that thing of I've already spent my transfer. When I get to the press conference, I could find out that player's injured. I don't want to give myself that amount of stress, really.
I mean, these days as well, with the Saturday morning as well, still further news starts coming out.
Yes.
So even on the Friday is too soon in some cases.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of who to get in and who to captain, so we obviously mentioned loyalty. If perhaps things are going tricky and you haven't got one of your staple guys like Aguero, you think, right, well, this is it. Aguero's coming in, this is going to sort me out. But how else do you decide? And I'm thinking of things like, how much the eye test influences you, whether you look at underlying stats, and if so, which ones. So how do you come to those decisions?
Okay, well, transfers and captaincy, I always, try and obviously pick someone who I know is nailed on and is going to play. So I have two sort of surds for the vice and for the main captaincy. And that was one of the things that I did around Christmas actually this year, is that I got Kane in, and I went back to Salah in the end. And I had those two set up, nicely for Christmas, so I could sort of, rotate the captaincy around on them. I always felt like they were sure to play. I try and sort of set up transfers for planning the captaincy in advance. So I'll try and use the sort of transfers around getting the big hitters in. at sort of key stages when either the fixtures are going to improve or they have good form at the time. I mean, getting the captaincy is vital. I mean, I think I've looked at around 30% of my points have come from the captaincy
Wow.
this year. So yeah, I mean, it's a real big decision. I mean, you need to spend a bit of time, thinking about the captaincy.
Has that always been the way as well? Looking back at some of your previous seasons as well, I guess that includes the Leicester season. So you probably, after a while, were thinking Vardy, Mahrez are starting to be captain, that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. The penny dropped. It did take a while, to be
Yeah, I was going
honest.
to say because it's the same with me. I took a while, then eventually I just didn't captain
Yeah,
anyone other than them.
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's that thing of loyalty again. You build it up over time, and then you keep going back to them. And I think it's important to be happy with who you're going to captain. No matter what, and you can sort of live with that sort
And
of thing.
you're
Can't you?
going for talisman as well. You're going for Salah, Aguero, Vardy. Let's pretend Arnautovic had a good season. He could have been in the running as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
In the past, he's been a talisman as well. But you
yeah.
haven't really gone for for example this season it's the non nailed on ones. So this season with Lacazette and Aubameyang, they've been good
Mm.
scorers, but I personally avoided them because I don't know where they're going to start. And I certainly don't know whether
Yeah,
they'd sign off to captain them. Is that the kind of thing
yeah,
you look at as well?
yeah. I've had I think I've had a Aubameyang maybe for 1 week.
Yeah,
I've not had Lacazette at all. I've really stayed away from Arsenal really this year. Aubameyang's a funny one. I've kind of fancied getting him in, but I've just always been a bit unsure. He's either playing out wide or just as I think, right, I'm going to get him in. He gets a rest or he
yeah.
gets benched. The week before, and it's like, okay, I'm off him again, sort of thing. But yeah, I've kind of like I say, I have my loyalty really. A lot of things. I kind of get a feeling about loyalty and the players that I want to keep going back to. Um,
This season you've predominantly used 3-4-3. Is that a simple case of that you like 3-4-3, or does that also indicate that you're a type of manager that plays that kind of price points way, where you have a quite a decent structure together, like a steady structure where you think, well, I'm going to have these. I'm going to have two premium strikers, two premium midfielders. I'm going to have a million midfield, and so on. Only two, you know, three cheap defenders, two expensive ones. Do you play like
yeah.
that, or yeah? What's your feeling about kind of team structure and formation?
Well, I always sort of try and go for 3-4-3. I mean, I think we've been quite fortunate this year because the budget forwards have been, really good. Jimenez and Rashford and Mitrovic, So I think it's been quite kind for us to sort of spend maybe a bit more money in midfield. I mean, I usually start off, game week one with quite a cheap bench. And then kind of around the sort of maybe sort of first wild card sort of time, I try and sort of spend maybe a little bit more money on the bench, to try and sort of have a few more options just in case, injuries and such like crop up. And then, again, it saves you taking hits and that sort of thing. I mean, one thing that I've now sort of adopted is to have a good defender as the first sub. In the past, I've usually gone, as cheap as I can, sort of on midfield, and then had, sort of a 4.5, to go come in as first sub. It's usually midfielder, but
Yeah,
this year I've decided to do it as a defender, only for the sort of reason that a defender can sort of come in and replace any position. So the formation would then you sort of revert back to 4
but
4
this
2.
also indicates the role defenders have in our fantasy sides.
Yeah,
Now they're scoring goals, the likes of Alonso, for example,
yeah,
and they're getting assists. I mean, it's reached its perhaps we peaked this week with the captaincy on Duffy for so many people from Brighton. Maybe
Yeah.
peak defender love, but that first it's something I've been looking at as well. So that cheap midfielder or that cheap striker is actually now looking at that and thinking, actually, I think this wing back for Southampton is gonna outscore them. Do you envisage that being, going forward into future campaigns?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm going to definitely concentrate on that that first sub, having a decent defender, set up, someone that you're happy to play, happy for them to come in. And then again, you're not sort of, maybe stressing too much about rotation and who's going to be on the team sheet. And then you've got that sort of safety net there. So, I've tried to, set up with, Wan-Bissaka's been, great, this year. He's been a little gem, hasn't he? And Doherty as well. Doherty from Wolves. So yeah, I've tried to sort of set it up around that really.
So that might be a good piece of advice for the coming campaign next season. Already looking ahead, is to look at those. Who's going to be the next Doherty? Who's going to be the next Wan-Bissaka? The next 4.5 attack-minded defender, and then play them, get them first sub. Don't bury them away. I wanted to look really at overall with your career, because you started off with those kind of quite poor ranks, around the 500,000 mark, and then suddenly shooting up to, there's no middle ground here. It's like not very good to like wow. And you've done that slightly differently to a lot of veteran managers who've been playing for that length of time or a bit longer. And one of the things that's often said is things like the Twitter noise, the proliferation of information overload, more information out there as well. But also, managers are getting better. There's more managers who are getting better. So it's tougher, increasingly competitive. You're doing it the other way around as well. Why do you think that is? And as part of that, have you had to adapt to the way the information is going in over those years?
Yeah, you mentioned the Twitter. Twitter's it's a great tool. It's very useful for finding those sort of gold little bits of information that maybe you don't find anywhere else. But all in all, Twitter can be. I think sometimes you got to take it with a pinch of salt. It can install a bit of fear. Really sometimes as well.
Doubt decisions.
Absolutely, yeah. A couple of weeks ago, for example, when we had the whole, Vardy not being in training, thing. It doesn't really, necessarily mean a lot. Again, I'm going to go back to the press conferences again. You've got to try and sort of get the factual information, from the press conferences and the manager, and not try and listen to the rumours on Twitter so much if you can do, but it's a raft of information out there, isn't it? And you've got to try and sort of home it in and try and stick to the facts basically and what the managers are saying in the press conferences each week.
Yeah, I know that's always something I know my colleague Neil and David do when they're doing the Twitter, when we're doing the Fantasy Football Scout Twitter information that comes in, is if it's not being said by the actual team itself, then it's treated with a pinch of salt and then maybe presented in a way of like, this is being reported, but we haven't got anything definite on this.
That the video, the press conferences roundup that you do on a Friday afternoon is fantastic, because if you're at work all week and then you finish on a Friday and then you can just quickly.
No, I find it useful. I just listen to Neil and he tells me.
It's fantastic. You get it all in one place, don't you? I couldn't make a transfer without seeing that first, basically. So
thanks.
Really good.
Looking at this 2016-17 season, 86,000. Now, for some people, top 100,000 finish is pretty good. I would imagine for you, given you finished in the top 5,000 the previous two seasons, you probably were quite disappointed with that. What happened that season, and what did you do differently? Was it a case of dumb luck, or was it a case of that you did some different things and it didn't work out?
I'm going to blame it on the wife, Joe, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
I got married in 2017, so it's
all
far
her
too
fault.
busy to be concentrating on fantasy football. No, do you know? I was having to think about that year, and I was actually doing well until a certain Sanchez had a hat trick versus West Ham,
Oh,
and a lot of people had him as captain, and I didn't even have him in my team that week, and I plummeted down the rankings, and that one moment is what sticks out in my memory of that season. And I sort of went into this sort of rage mode of not being patient for the rest of the season, really. And
fascinating.
I was, I think Spurs were doing well. Ali and Ericsson, I had them in, I
Yeah.
had them out. I had Ericsson in, then I had him out. I could not decide which Spurs midfielder to go for. That went on and on for ages. I
Meanwhile,
think,
these transfers are being wasted because all you're doing
I,
is.
yeah, all lessons learned really that I've tried to home in now. I was late on a lot of players. I think Alonso had a really good season that year. That was before my sort of Alonso's loyalties were sort of in place. And was that the year that Costa had the yellow card?
It could have been. And
Yeah,
he
I've
never
got
got that fifth yellow, did he?
yeah, and that went on for weeks, and I refused to get him in.
Yeah.
I was thinking it's going to be this week. He's going to get his yellow card. It never came, and I just laid off him, and he was just scoring and
It's
scoring and scoring.
it's really odd looking at those career rankings because those 4 years are almost identical to me, and what you've just described there is
Yeah,
identical to me. Because I did
right.
well in those seasons you did well, and I got 80 something thousand in that season. And to
Yeah,
be honest, I was glad I got that in the end. I was doing so badly.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it was exactly
yeah.
around that time, and I got Sanchez in after his hat trick, and he never
Right.
got me anything else again. And but one of the things that happened with me then, and I also did what you did as well. I just started going, not listening to my usual tactics, which is similar
Yeah.
to yours. But another thing I did is I invested a lot in Sanchez, getting him in, and I kept two or three other heavy hitters, and the rest
Right.
of the team was absolutely awful. And
Yeah.
that's something I've learnt since is not to invest so much. That's why I've rarely had Salah and Kane this season at the same time. Now, for you, is that something that happened with you in that season as well?
It's funny, just that breaking point can change. I
Yeah.
think your sort of mental state and I think you go into a bit of panic mode.
Yeah.
And I was taking hit after hit, really being impatient. Like again, like I say, with the Spurs guys. I think another one was I didn't get Tom Heaton in, and I think he had a really good season that year. And I think that was another mistake that I didn't get my goalkeeper sorted out, and I was just not settled, with the team. I just I think it was around probably over 100 points in the end of hits, that season, because I remember calculating it up and
Yeah.
thinking, wow,
Yeah.
I can't believe I've ended up spending, that many.
Often find that for players like you and myself, when you get a couple of good overall ranking finishes in the world, something common to those seasons is it just all seems to fit in place. It's like, oh, I like this player. I've got a good captain this week.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't quite go right, you feel it's a bit like ants in the pants. Kind of, you just feel all jittery. It's not just,
Yeah.
just really uncomfortable with it. And it sounds like that happened with you. What have you learned from that then? Not to panic.
Yeah, just try to not panic now. I mean, I've been, quite lucky in a way this season. I've sort of always, kind of not shied away too much, from the template team, and the players that I've stayed loyal with have done me well, and I've just been able to, pull in the right players at the right time. I've stepped up my research and did. Started it pre-season with the World Cup, and sort of had a definite plan on game week one that I would go with the players that were rested and ready to go. And I got a good start this year, and I think it's really set me up for the rest of the season.
I often find in some seasons there are those handful of key moments. You just described one, the Sanchez hat trick at West Ham. And
Mm.
often find that success and failure in FPL is how we deal with it. Not whether we missed out on that, but how we deal with it as well. So, are there any other examples you can give of key moments over the years, or indeed this season, that have been, pivotal moments where you've either missed out, or you've done well from that, and how you dealt with that as well afterwards?
Um, well, this year I think I timed the first wild card quite well. Um, I think I did it in game week 6, and I think at the time that maybe felt it was slightly too early. I think some people might have even, quite a few people went even earlier than that. But I tried to sort of time it. Again, this is another sort of plan that I had for game week 1 around the World Cup was I sort of set out to think, right, I'm going to get back onto these players that had done well at the World Cup that were coming back in.
Like Hazard,
And
I guess, was
Hazard was one, Trippier was another one. They had good World Cups. I thought they've had a bit of a rest now. The confidence is high after playing well in the World Cup, and they were starting to sort of tick over, for a couple of weeks, and I thought, yeah, I think this is the time to get the first wild card in, and to start loading up on those players that had done well in the World Cup. I think another one is kind of weighing up like risk and reward with the captaincy. I think it's important to be happy with who you're captaining each week, no matter what the outcome. I mean, I've gone for Duffy this week and he hasn't actually, scored any points yet. But overall, I still do believe that, Duffy will come in. It's 2 swings of the bat. He's still got another game to play. And
So you go for that low risk, because looking at your captains, you've captained Salah and Aguero most often, which goes back to what you were saying about that loyalty there.
Yeah.
And very rarely you've captained Sterling and Vardy, but Sterling and Vardy have been your most successful captains this year. You've averaged more points from them. So,
right.
Looking at that, why is it, I mean, is that what you're talking about, that risk and reward? Why is it that you've gone to Salah and Aguero more, whereas Sterling and Vardy have actually been your most successful ones, but you've barely given them the armband?
Yeah, well, but I mean, after yesterday, I think I should have gone for Sterling, shouldn't I? But, I haven't even got him in my team at the moment. I mean, Vardy with Leicester. I mean, they were kind of blowing hot and cold a little bit, weren't they? I mean, I never really fancied Leicester before Rodgers came in, really. I mean, they've got the new manager bounce, haven't they, at the moment? I had Madison for a little time. He did okay, but I wasn't sort of, confident enough to put the captaincy on him. With Sterling, I think it was just, it's been a rotation. But fear of rotation.
I was looking at kind of what, I mean, it's hard to say, here's some advice for doing well when you're like outside the top 100, and I'm certainly nowhere near that. But I was just thinking in terms of getting you perhaps to the top 10, perhaps winning it. And one of my colleague Mark has frequently captained Sterling, and he's gone for that high risk of that because he doesn't know whether he's going to start any week. So even captaining him, he could come on and he could get 2 points, but he's just thought it's worth that risk because, as we've seen, he can get a brace or a hat trick. Do you think that the experience of that and your experience with Sterling, most successful captain but hardly used him, do you think that might carry into future years? Not necessarily with Sterling, but just another player like that, and just think he might get rotated, but I don't care because he's going to do well if he does play.
Yeah, it's keeping an eye on if he's playing. I think in the week, in the Champions League, or I remember I did captain him against Watford. And I think he scored like 40 points or maybe even more. but I'd done a bit of research because I noticed that I think City had a week off that week.
Right.
So I think he had a weekend, weekend to weekend break. And I just thought, yeah, I'm going to go for him this week. I was more sort of sure that he was going to start. But again, it's a luck thing. I put the armband on him and he scored a hat-trick. And I did a bit of research, but it was a bit of luck involved as well. I mean, there's also been other, high value, sort of high ownership players, like Hazard, say, example this year, who maybe I should have got him in a bit more frequently than I have done. I've not really owned him an awful lot this year. I mean, I think he's maybe the second highest scoring player in the game, but he blows hot and cold a lot. I mean, he has punished me when I've not had him and he's done well. Especially if people have, been captaining him if they've had the armband on him, and I've not even had him in my team at all. But I've soaked that up on the weeks that I've not had him, and he's blanked. So he's kind of, it's a bit of swings and roundabouts really, isn't it? On the on getting him right.
Your kind of low risk and go for the loyal picks is clearly working. You look at that career history in this season. I just want to turn a bit more detail to this season, and usually at this stage I put a team up and we talk about the players you've got. But before we get to that, what's interesting about you this season is your chip strategy. As you said, game week 6, successful first wild card. Your triple captain, game week 25, so that was on Aguero. So a great move there, great use of chip there. Free hit, game week 32, that was another great week for you, as it was for many others. Here's the difference though. Game week 23, you wildcarded. Now, myself and many others have been wildcarding over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Been using it immediately for the current double game week run. But you did it back in 23. Why did you do it then? And why do you think it's worked? Because it's propelled you from a really good rank to like, wow, almost in the top 100.
I didn't have a brilliant couple of weeks after New Year. I think around sort of the 1st of Jan, I think I was around sort of 900, and I think it slipped back to about 5,000, which it felt like a really big drop.
I look at that and go, wow, I'm still in the top 5,000. Let's carry on.
Yeah,
you look at that and go, I'm establishing the difference between you and people like me. No, I can do better.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I was in, 900. I thought I want to be still even pushing forward. You almost start to sort of get a bit greedy in a way, and you think, come on, let's keep pushing, let's keep going, and you get the motivation. And there was that, and also I kind of thought that maybe my team was moving sort of slightly away from the template at the time as well. I mean, another major thing was that Solskjaer took over at United. They just looked like a completely different team, and I was like, oh my goodness, I've just not got enough United players in. I needed to get Pogba, I needed to get Rashford, I need to get on the defence. I did know that going early was going to be going against the crowd, but I just felt at the time that it was right for my team. And also there was the issue of the City double was approaching, because City had got to the League Cup final. So, like you mentioned, the triple captaincy on Aguero, I wanted to sort of try and get some structure in, to make sure that had the City double, covered. So I could, triple captain Aguero in 25. That was in my mind, when I hit the wild card button. Really, it goes back again to that loyalty and Aguero. And as soon as I saw that City had a double, no matter what the fixtures were, I thought I've got to get it on Aguero. I've got to take that opportunity, straight away. And again, it's that risk and reward thing. I mean, it was 50-50. A lot of people went for Sane. As it turned out, unfortunately, he only got 3 points. But for me, I fancied Aguero. I mean, I think a lot of people were maybe worried that he wasn't the first striker as well, and then maybe he was a bit more rotation than he's been having. So, all in all, I just sort of, it felt right. It felt right for the team.
How did you? Because it's say it quite nonchalantly. I knew I was going, against the grain of going against, the crowd. How have you coped with that since then, and also before you made that decision? Because that takes a bit of bravery in FPL to say, almost everyone I follow on Twitter or whatever is doing this, but I'm just going to do it a bit different. And what advice would you give for people who want to do what's good for them and not good for the crowd?
I think it's being happy with your team, and when you're sort of higher up the ranks, it's kind of, you still want to push on, and you still want to go even better, and you think, I did. I thought, I'm this high now. I thought, in a way, I kind of, roles reversed, and I was like, let's just go for it and see what happens. All go, sort of pear-shaped, from there on in. But at least I've had a go. When I got, 900 at New Year, I thought I could do this. I could get really close to the top, and I thought I wouldn't want to look back at it and let the season slip away. When it slipped to around sort of 5,000, I thought, I'm not going to let it go any further. I'm going to change something. I had a couple of weeks I didn't have United players in, and I thought, no, I'm going to go for it and see what happens now.
Well, let's have a look at the team that you've got at the moment. So, interviewing you during the Game Week 34 double game week. So you've had to do two things. You've had to do what's good for your team and look at that. And you've also, I would imagine, had to keep an eye on what others are doing. So you're going against this big crowd of Game Week 34. Game Week 34, indeed Game Week 33 wildcarders. And so you've got to have an eye on their play. So to what extent, I'll just go through the team, I'll list them out, and then you can tell me to what extent you've picked players so that you're comfortable with them in your team, but also comfortable that you're not being kind of outdone by those like me who are wildcarding. So you've got Etheridge in goal and Guaita from Crystal Palace. Your back line is Robertson, Luca Dean and Shane Duffy. You've also got Doherty and Bednarak there. And your midfield, Mane, Pogba, Salah, Son and Fraser. So quite a strong midfield there. Jimenez, Deeney and Vardy complete your team. There's the three up front. So sticking with that formation, your 3-4-3, you like that. And the cheap strikers you mentioned, that fits in with your structure there. And you've got some reliables there as well. You've got Salah, and Pogba has been a reliable, not necessarily recently, but he certainly was for you, instrumental in your rise up the rankings as well. And Mane there. And so to what extent is that team constructed with you in mind and the crowd in mind?
Well, this week I've tried to cover really the players who I thought that most people would be getting in on their wild card. So went for Duffy and Son and Deeney. So even though I've, kind of obviously not been able to fully, cover, the likes of, Sterling, for example, I've tried to sort of get those bases covered, for getting out some single game week players who, necessarily, weren't on form at the time, and then get in, the players that had the double for next week. But again, I'm going to go back to that loyalty. Again, I've got that loyalty now, even with those single game week players, and I've kind of purposefully tried to keep with the players who people were selling on their wild card. So Salah, Vardy, Pogba.
Yeah.
Pogba has really been a gamble that's paid off this week. You know, I was really having jitters about keeping him. You know, his stats had gone down. He'd sort of, you know, he's playing further back, but I thought, no, I'm going to stick with him. He had a good game against West Ham, and you know, as it load, I mean, you know, we got the penalties, and you know, it's paid off. And Salah again, he's, you know, played really well. I just thought, you know, it was great timing him scoring week before last, and I just thought he could maybe go on a bit of a run now.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, the final push now for the title, and you know, if he gets, you know, scoring goals again, he's got his head up. And I thought, now I've got, you know, got to stick with him. And Vardy, you know, he's okay, you know, blank this weekend, but he's been on a great run. And you know, someone like Vardy, you get to, you know the players, don't you? That he goes on these scoring streaks, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Getting a goal, a couple of goals, you know, every game. And I'm just like, I've got, you know, you've got to get on him early, and which I did. And you know, when Rodgers first came about, I got onto Vardy straight away, and he, you know, it's really sort of done me well. But you know, I think it's some of these, you know, single game week players this week, like Salah, Mane, you know, I think they're going to maybe score just as well as some of the double game week players.
Well, I know with say for example Vardy, I didn't fancy him to do well against Newcastle. Newcastle just not his type of team, you know, defend deep. But I looked ahead to the fixtures. He's got a game against Arsenal coming up, and I looked at that and I thought, if I was in your position, because looking at your team when you wildcard, I kind of imagine myself what I would try and do, and I would definitely keep Vardy because of those fixtures coming up. Now you've got Fraser there. Unfortunately, he's on your bench and he's stuck to your bench, but it's kind of half there. You've got him, but he's still got good fixtures coming up as well. So I imagine he's staying put as well.
Absolutely, I've been so loyal to him.
Yeah.
He feels like a comfy pair of slippers. I just can't get rid of him now. I've had him for so long this season that I just can't get rid of him. Even through the bad run of form and the bad fixtures, you know, I've just stayed with him. You know, just bless him.
And you're so loyal to him. You can just forgive him for being on your bench.
Yeah, basically, I'll have to. I think. Yeah.
That's not too bad considering the other players you've got there, and you've also matched. Players, I was also going to say fools like me, captaining a Brighton defender, but at least you've got that covered. Should Duffy get the dream of a goal and a clean sheet, most people will watch this after the event, they'll know what a dreamer I've been. It's a strong squad. It marries up two things, and it's got some players there that others, the wildcarders, won't have, and the single game weekers won't have as well, and sorry, those who haven't wildcarded and focusing on single game weekers. What's happening now? You've got game week 35 coming up, and then season ends at game week 38. Not many transfers left. Who might possibly go and who might possibly come in over the remaining game weeks?
Digne, I'm not too sure about. He's got United this week, and even though they have been very good defensively at the moment, I'm just wondering if to swap him out for a double game week player. But I'm going to have to get some City cover. Probably Sterling, maybe Aguero. I'll have a little think about that. Concentrate on those golden boot players.
How do you get Aguero or Sterling in? Someone's got to go.
It will take some planning and decision making, but not quite decided as yet. Probably going to ride out the double City game week and see how it goes. They've got quite a tricky double game week, so I think I'll probably make my decision after that. See how I get in. But concentrate on the golden boot players really, and concentrate on the top four places really. So it's still a good battle going on in it. United and Chelsea, Arsenal, Spurs. So stick with them. Maybe sort of look at an Arsenal option. And then the other thing will be a 7th place, the Europa League places with Wolves and Watford. So Jimenez and Deeney, I'll probably stick with them, to be honest, because they're obviously fighting out for the 7th place now. So
you've got your bench boost left as well. When's that going to be played?
that'll be coming in next week in
Oh, okay.
35. Yeah,
Right, yeah.
so I've set up quite nicely for that. Because yeah, Fraser's got a good week. I think he's got Fulham this week. And to be honest, I'm not too happy with the goalkeepers this week. I think they've both got quite difficult games. But yeah, all in all, even though I've not got that many double game week plays. They've all got quite tasty single game week fixtures. Apart from Digne, who I
Okay.
might look at moving on.
Well, excellent. Well, thanks so much for joining me. It's been fascinating. I particularly take the loyalty angle as well, because it's something that goes beyond patience as well. Because patience can be something can run out, but you've been loyal to these players as well, and they've been loyal back to you. Pogba this week especially, and if only you'd played Fraser, but nevertheless he was loyal to you. But Pogba there, lots of people dumped him. I've dumped him over the last few weeks, and yeah, maybe I should have kept him. But for now, Pete, thanks so much. Thanks for your advice about your career so far, and good luck with the next game week. Good luck with the rest of the season.
Thanks, Joe. Really appreciated that. That's great. Thank you.